Hi, and thanks for joining me on my search for the Thylacine. My many years of interest in the Thylacine, or Tasmanian tiger as it's more commonly known, turned into an obsession. In early 2014, I set off on a solo expedition into the remote west of Tasmania. I took with me 4 wildlife surveillance cameras, a cell base to send data back to my computer at home, and 135 kilograms of equipment and food. I chose this area for several reasons. During the period when bounties were placed on the Thylacine, animals were shot to the north, east and south of this area. The area is very isolated, with no forestry or mining. It is cut off by a fast-flowing river and the terrain is very difficult. During 6 days in the wilderness, I searched for suitable locations to install the cameras. It rained for much of each day and keeping dry was impossible. Within a few days of setting up each camera site, animals began appearing in front of the cameras. When my computer started receiving images sent by the cell base, I was amazed to find such large numbers of carnivores and herbivores appearing night after night on the cameras. The Thylacine is an ambush predator, and the terrain along with the abundance of prey makes the area perfect habitat for the Thylacine. I'm very fortunate being able to take on an expedition such as this, and I've really enjoyed the time alone. After 6 days I'd placed out all the cameras, and now it was time to head into town for a well-earned bath. Quick satellite phone call to my pilot and I was out of there. For 11 months all the cameras performed well. I could retrieve images sent to my computer at home daily. Then within weeks, one by one, the cameras went offline. Within a few more weeks I could no longer contact the cell base, so it was time to head back to Tassie to retrieve the camera gear. The first location I would fly to would be the mountain peak where the cell base is located. As the helicopter manoeuvred into position to land on the mountain peak, It was obvious that one of the aerials was not standing upright. The cell base had sustained damage not only to the aerial but to leads and disconnection to the battery. It was like a wombat had ploughed through the equipment. With the cell base retrieved, I now had to collect the 4 cameras. I would soon learn what caused the cameras to go offline. As I suspected, the electrical lead that runs between the solar panel and the battery had been chewed through. Looking down onto the forest, the many dead trees that dot the landscape is the result of a wildfire that went through the area about 9 years ago. Approaching the landing zone, there's one more thing I realised I needed to do before I headed off to Burnie on the north coast. About 2 years ago I found what looks like a thylacine lair under a large rock ledge. I'm going back to this location to take some bedding samples for testing. On this windswept side of a hill is a large depression with thick scrub providing a very sheltered and warm environment. It's the perfect place for a lair. The purpose of collecting samples from the bedding material is to extract hairs that may be embedded in the leaf matter which makes up the bed. The package of leaf litter will be sent to a lab where any hairs will be removed for identification and DNA testing. With samples of the bedding material collected, I headed off for burning. When my cell phone came into range, I retrieved a message from my helicopter pilot telling me to expect a call from a truck driver who claims he recently saw a thylacine. I recorded the conversation.
Coming back from Strawn in the truck, and 7 o'clock that morning, I notified the national parks and put a marker up and told the guy. He trotted all the way across the road right in front of the truck. Now, he would have only been probably 30 to 40 metres in front of me when he came up on the road. And he got about halfway to the white line, and I thought, if I don't slow down, I'm going to run this animal over.
Yeah.
I was bearing down on him fairly quick. I was doing about 80 k's.
Yeah.
And, I lifted the foot off and the engine brakes come on. But, he never seems though he hurried. He just had this little trotty sort of skippy sort of gait with him.
Yeah.
And by the time he went off the left-hand side of the highway, I was looking down the bottom left-hand corner of the windscreen. I would have been only probably 2 or 3 metres from him, I reckon.
Okay.
And the first sighting I saw of him is he just come up out of the table drain onto the highway. And as soon as he got 1.5 metres onto the highway, his tail was poking out the hind quarter like an iron bar. And I thought to myself, that's a young juvenile tiger. It's the only thing it could be.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
I set up camp at the burning caravan park. Now I have time to inspect the damage caused by animals chewing through the electrical cables. Not knowing if unsent images remained on the cameras, I cut out the damaged sections of wires and set up the entire system on the back of the vehicle to send this data back to my computer at home. After 2 weeks on the island, it was now time to head home and repair the camera gear. Four months later, with the camera gear all repaired, I'm back in Tassie. But unfortunately, there won't be any helicopter for this trip. I set up camp along a quiet dirt road, high on a hill where my cell phone could pick up a signal. The following day I prepared the cell base, which will be deployed high on a hilltop. The cell base is made up of this receiver transmitter, a 12-volt battery similar in size to a car battery, a solar panel to keep the battery charged, and 2 aerials, one to receive data from the cameras, which can be up to 5 kilometres away, and an aerial to transmit the data through the mobile phone network. With the weather finally on my side, I set off to install the cell base. After only an hour, I think I'd stopped for my 5th rest. And within a few minutes, I noticed a very strong odour coming from close by. It looks like the carcass of a wombat. By the condition of the body, I would expect it met its end about 2 weeks ago. I think I'm halfway to where I need to go to put the base station out. And I thought of going back and then loading up camera gear to go another few k's further on and put them out. Oh, why do I do this for? Oh dear. Reaching the top of the hill, or at my age I get to call it a mountain, I am totally exhausted. It takes about 35 minutes to set up the cell base, including anchoring everything down. These hilltops get very windy. A quick call home to my wife, who checks the connection status, informs me everything is working well. Getting back to base camp, it's gonna be an early night. After a day or two recovering from setting up the cell base, I'm now ready to deploy the cameras. Each camera station is made up of the camera with small aerial as an option, a large directional aerial as a second option, the battery, and a solar panel to keep the battery charged. Carrying 2 days' rations and camping gear, I now set off looking for suitable sites to set up the cameras. These bare patches within the button grass are common natural features which make suitable sites to set up the cameras. With each camera site plotted in my memory, I head back to the base camp to collect the camera gear. With all the tools and hardware, I can carry and install 2 camera stations per day. To reduce weight on this field trip, I have left the heavier camera and the tripod back at base camp, and I now rely on the iPhone to record the video. To attract animals, I am trialling salt and mineral licks which are used in the livestock industry. One feature in the landscape I look for when setting up the cameras are animal tracks, such as this one, which runs right past the camera. The last camera finally goes into position. I am several kilometres from the cell base, so I'll have to use this larger directional aerial so the camera can communicate with the cell base. With the cameras all deployed, sadly this trip is coming to an end, but before I go home I have one last task to complete. I'm heading deep into the Thylacine wilderness. I'm going to retrieve some older style cameras which I installed over 3 years ago. Each time I return to Tasmania, weather or time prevents me from collecting these cameras.
You will